I started very late. I was 13.
Oh, wow.
Before I'd even played a note. What I found extraordinary was they all said, where are you going to do your masters? Not, what are you going to do? Where are you going to do your masters? It was like that was the given. I recognised in the early days that I was going to have to play a lot for free. How do you expect to get paid engagements if you don't have any performance experience to show?
Welcome back to another episode of On Music and Making. My name is Jeremy. I'm the host and the creator of this show, where I talk to classical musicians about their craft and their stories. On this episode, we have concert pianist Lewis Kingsley Peart. Lewis is a concert pianist from Manchester here in the UK. I met him a few years back and I was instantly taken by his bubbly and lively personality. His story is a very interesting one. He only started learning the piano at the age of 13, and a few years later, he was accepted into one of the country's top music specialist schools, Chetham School of Music. While many pianists, after studying an undergraduate degree, would then go on to study a master's degree in order to hone their skills, and you would think that Lewis would be the first person to do so, given that he had fewer years than others to study the instrument. Lewis actually decided to take the road less travelled, and after graduating from Trinity Laban Conservatoire, he decided to embark on a freelance career as a concert pianist. Throughout our conversation, I could feel that Lewis is a very down-to-earth person who truly believes in following his heart. This has influenced the way he connects with his audience, his approach to stagecraft, as well as the way he creatively curates programs around pieces he loves and pieces he believes suits his personality. We had a great time being open with each other and being honest about the challenges faced by conservatoire students as well as freelance pianists early in their career in the modern world. We also talked about how there are certain things that need changing in the current classical music world. If you're aspiring to be a pianist yourself and want to know more about the freelance career, if you're someone who's studying music at conservatoire, or if you're contemplating studying music, then I think this conversation with Lewis will resonate with you particularly. And so without further ado, sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of On Music and Making with Lewis Kingsley Peart. Welcome back to another episode of On Music and Making. My name is Jeremy. I'm your host today, and with me today is Lewis Kingsley
Peart.
That's right, Lewis Kingsley Peart. I would say you are a pianist who follows a slightly unconventional path. But first, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit to our audience?
Yeah, well, I'm Lewis, and I'm a pianist. My journey into music is perhaps slightly different from other people. I started very late. I was 13.
Oh, wow.
Before I'd even played a note on anything, on any instrument really. And so before that, I really had no interest in music at all. But I was into performing arts before that, from about the age of 6, really. I went to a drama school and...
so you're into like theatre?
Very much. But I never... Musicals, plays, all of that. But, and I loved it, but I never thought it would be something I would do professionally. In fact, I always said I wanted to be a dentist.
A dentist?
Yes, and now I spend my life with a different set of teeth grinning back at me. So
you say that a lot, do you?
Rehearse that one. But yes, I think it was quite an unconventional path, and I think quite a shock to my family when I, said I want to learn the piano, and then I think literally maybe a few weeks in, I said, I think I want to do this really seriously.
So you went from 0 to 100
pretty much
within a few weeks?
I remember it was feverish, the obsession with the keyboard.
Was it because you touched the piano, or was it more like you heard a concert?
So what it was, when I went to secondary school, lots of my friends could play instruments and they were in the band, and I thought I was quite envious of them. I think I always thought that looks kind of fun, being able to play together, and so I said to the head of music, who became my first piano teacher, Mrs. Waters, I said I would really love to learn to play. And she said, well, what do you want to play? And I think I just said, I don't know, piano looks fun. And she was a pianist, and she gave me my first lessons. And it became apparent quite quickly that I was good at it. And it just kind of went from there. And then it was literally every spare moment I had, I was practicing. Although looking back, knowing what I know now, it wasn't practice. you know what I mean by that.
Well, we're always evolving as practitioners, I
Exactly, yes. But it was just a real obsession, actually.
Okay.
I was obsessed with the sound, how it felt under my fingers. I loved it. I really, really loved it.
Were you more geared towards classical, or were you not thinking about any of this kind of stuff?
I don't think I was thinking about any of that. I was playing everything. Mrs. Waters introduced me to classical repertoire. She loved Debussy, still loves Debussy, Schumann, things like this, and she would play her repertoire to me, But I used to play Adele for the singers at school, the girls that wanted to sing Adele or whatever, and anything that was going, I would play it. And I suppose I became a bit of a school pianist and played for lots of concerts, and I remember playing lots of ragtime, lots of Scott Joplin. Actually, I really, really enjoyed that, and I enjoyed.
Is it still in you?
I think so, and I enjoyed the reaction that got from people. People really enjoyed that kind of jolly music, and I think I enjoyed giving that joy to people.
So that was when you were 13.
Yes,
and then. After a few years, what happened? Did you go to a specialist school, to focus on your music?
I did. I went to Chetham School of Music at the age of 16.
Okay.
For my A-levels.
That's but normally people go there when they're like 11, right? Or you can join in later.
Well, they take pupils from aged 8 to 18. Okay. And so I joined right at the start of my A-levels, and
then, well, just for people who don't know, Chetham's is like a music specialist school, but they still, offer a focus on academics. It's not like you only have to pursue music, or is it?
Sure. So basically, it is a specialist music school, but they teach all other subjects as well while you're there, right? But you have your instrumental lessons, there's weekly choir, there's oral training, there's performance classes, and all sorts of... It's a very holistic musical education. And I decided to audition there, and it really was me that decided. I think I must have gone online and found this, when I was looking for colleges, and because it was either that or the local sixth form college, and I remember going to an open day there and thinking, if I want to do music serious, I have to go to Chetham's. I have to work really hard.
You to do this.
Nobody. And I really mean that, and it's quite extraordinary to think that, actually. I think, my family have always supported me, but never said, you must do this. It's always been a self-driven thing. And
that's amazing. And that is very important, in the long term as well, isn't it?
I think so. And so I, said I want to go to Chetham's, and Mrs. Waters helped to prepare me. And I remember... What did I play for my audition? I played the Prelude from Sweet Bergamasque by Debussy, C.P. Bach's Solfeggetto, which they asked me in the audition to play in D minor. It's in C minor. They said try it in D minor. I think I got a few bars in and gave up.
Sounds like stories from the Moscow Conservatory.
I know. And I must have played a third piece, but I can't remember what it was.
I mean, the fact that you remember two is pretty amazing.
And I got in.
Yeah, and was it a shock to your system? I mean, 3 years to go from, having not touched the piano to, auditioning for probably the top music specialist school in the country is a big step.
It is a big step, and I don't remember feeling overwhelmed. I do remember feeling this is where I need to be, and I met incredible people there and made friends for life, really. It was an inspiring place to be, an energising place to be, and it was intense as well, of course. Of course it was. But I do remember feeling that it's what had to happen.
So it was the right step for you
I think so.
To take that, yeah. And then after Chetham's, you went to Trinity?
I did.
Yeah.
And that was sort of by chance, in a way, I auditioned at the Royal Northern College and at Trinity, and I got accepted at the Royal Northern, and obviously got my place at Trinity. And
because you yourself are from Manchester.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I went to Trinity really because one of my best friends from Chetham was studying there, and I thought I'll go and audition, have a weekend in London, But then I found that Philip Fowke was a teacher there, and someone had said to me, he's very good, you know, you should have a consultation lesson with him. And that's when my pianistic life changed, when I met Philip. And I thought, I've got to study with this man. And so he was my main teacher at Trinity. So I really went to Trinity for Philip. And that's what really drove that decision. And he, I think, taught me how to play and how to develop my technique in ways that were very practical, uncomplicated and straightforward. And I could feel the results happening in real time.
Can you give me some examples of how, like his method, or, you know, like, did he give you Czerny exercises? Probably not, right?
Not Czerny, but certainly exercises.
So it's like building you back up. From
totally. I remember going with this list of pieces that I wanted to play.
Yeah.
And he said, well, before we do any of that, you know, can you, I don't know, hold down a chord and lift these two fingers? And of course I couldn't, you know.
Yeah.
And he said, well, you know, how do you expect to play all this music if you haven't developed that kind of coordination? Never occurred to me. And so that's what we started from, that kind of thing, and building up stamina through various exercises, and lots of his own exercises, actually.
Oh, he had his own exercises.
Yeah, that he'd kind of developed over the years.
But more like, I'm going to show you something, rather than like, here's a book, right?
Yeah, although I do remember him telling me to get the book of Beringer exercises, which I already had.
Okay.
And I said, I've already got that, you know, and Docniani exercises as well, which I think are incredibly economical, actually, very quick results in short time. And I still do all these now, by the way, these exercises. I maintain a regular diet of technical exercises, and I think they're essential for me.
Every day, every practice. Day. How many minutes?
Oh, 20 to 30 minutes. Nothing extreme.
Okay.
But coordination. I like to alternate between closed hand and open hand exercises. So it might be scales, then octaves, then thirds, then diminished chords. You know, so you're never in extended positions for a long time. These are things that I learnt and helped me to develop.
But when you first started, like, surely that must have been frustrating.
It was frustrating.
No list sonatas, no whatever, just exercise.
It was frustrating. It was intense.
Yeah.
But he never, ever made me feel that I was starting over again.
Yeah, that's important. I think how a teacher frames the way they see you, you know, how they make you see yourself is so important.
Absolutely, and I try to do that in my own teaching. You know, if you take somebody and you can see... It's very difficult when you've got someone who's been playing for a long time and, you know, they don't know that they've got these things that they need to develop, and so important never to make them feel that you're starting from scratch with them again.
And as a teacher myself now, I feel that it's really just, it's a fine line, isn't it? It's just how you frame the words to them, really, because, like, you know, someone can make a technical mistake and you can tell them, oh, actually, I can see you're trying, but why don't you try this? And they can do it. Or you can be like, that was terrible. Like, go back home, practice it another 100 times. And, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean, you know, one of them were playing worse than the other. Yeah. It's just how you frame them to get them to play. That's so important. Because I found with me, teachers who really helped me were the ones who were more, like, positive.
Totally.
Reinforcing me positively.
I never responded to that kind of harsh teaching. Yeah. Never responded well to it. And but I also have friends and colleagues who say their teachers were like that, and they'd love it. You know, they'd get a kind of buzz off being told, being screamed at to go and practice.
That's kind of strange.
It would just make me feel terrible.
Yeah.
I'm a sensitive person, and I always have been, and I've had to work quite hard to toughen my skin a little bit.
Deal with criticism, because that's what we have to do a lot.
Exactly right. But I think teachers can cause so much damage if they're not being careful. And actually, going back to what we were just talking about, I think we all can become a little bit guilty of kind of knowledge bias, which I think, by that I mean we forget what it's like to not know something. So you might have a pupil that comes to you and you think, well, you might think at first, how can you not have thought to practice it like this? Or how can you not hear that you're pedaling, you're blurring the harmony
You
there?
must have not practiced,
exactly,
that's why.
But actually you've got to remind yourself, we were all in that position once.
Yeah.
And as you said, do it gently and kindly and in a way that's encouraging. And that's what Philip always did. Always.
Okay, that's one. And then you were with him for 4 years?
4 years.
And then that's where I think, well, maybe I'm wrong, but most pianists, especially in classical music, especially in the UK system, would then go on to do a master's degree, something, because I feel the undergraduate life is more like, okay, well, as you said, it was more like building your technique back up, starting to get some repertoire, especially for people, who started late. Well, I think the UK system is pretty welcoming to people who are, not necessarily prodigies, but, who love music, and they would welcome them, everyone follows the same system. But then really the master's degree is where you actually get stuff, you hone the repertoire and prepare for competitions. But you decided to not do a master's.
Yes.
And that was a pretty conscious decision, wasn't it?
It was, yes. I remember getting to that sort of crossroads, that moment when it was, okay, undergraduate's coming to an end. What am I going to do? I don't know what it was that really made me feel I didn't want to do a master's. I had lots of conversations with about this with Philip at length. And I came to the decision that I didn't want to do it. I remember, you'll probably remember this when you're coming to the end of your time at your undergraduate course and you have meetings with course leaders and things like this, and they say to you, what I found extraordinary was they all said, where are you going to do your master's? Not, what are you going to do? Where are you going to do your master's? It was like that was the given next step.
Absolutely.
And then I remember saying, well, I'm not going to do a master's. And they said, what are you going to do? As if, what? And I said, well, I'm going to have a go at doing the thing that I've been training to do for 4 years. And Philip said to me, I think you're ready, get your program together and start writing to venues and start playing, and that's what I did. And I really have learnt and continue to learn so much about myself doing that. I think personally more than I would have done if I'd stayed in education, in informal education. I think I continued with mentors and teachers like Philip and Alistair Hogarth as well, who is wonderful.
Yeah.
And I was very lucky to have those, and I'm very lucky to have those people around me, guiding me.
Yeah.
But I think really the best education has been getting out there and having a go.
I've only graduated for about a year, but I already feel, even though you're kind of still doing the same thing in the sense that you're teaching, you're performing and you're practicing, it's kind of the same thing, but the mentality is completely different.
Yes.
Do you think, well, now that you've been out there working a few years, has it changed a lot since when you first graduated?
I think the thing I see, I don't know, it sounds kind of corny to say this, but when people say, oh, I look back and if 15-year-old me could see me now, but I think I look at that 16-year-old or whatever who was so full of ambition but also self-doubt. And I think we all battle that, but actually it's much quieter than it used to be, and that feels like a huge achievement.
That's great.
To feel that actually I know how to prepare, and I know how to get the job done that I'm trying to do to the best of my ability.
But why didn't you pursue a master's? Did you think it wasn't worthwhile? Did you already realize that you're not going to be going down that path that others perhaps are choosing to, which, you know, of course would mean intense preparation for competitions. That's like the most common route, isn't it? Yeah.
I don't know. I loved my piano lessons.
Yeah.
I loved that. But I didn't enjoy all the other classes and examinations, and I didn't enjoy the culture of music college very much. And I really developed a sort of allergy to repertoire lists, I think. You know, I wanted to play what I wanted to play, and I was so fed up of, you know, you have to play a romantic work of 10 minutes, you have to play a Bach prelude and fugue, you have to play a contemporary work, which nobody liked doing. I loved contemporary music, and I worked a lot with composers at Trinity, you know, and I used to play for their classes in which, you know, learn their pieces and play them. And I worked with Stephen Montague, an American composer, while I was at Trinity. And I loved all that, but I didn't like how prescriptive it felt.
Yeah.
I think basically there's a part of me that doesn't like being told what to do. You know, I really wanted to play what I wanted to play.
But I'm sure it wasn't just a rebellious strand, because, you know, you've been a few years out of education, and, you know, from the sound of it, you're still doing what you've been doing or you wanted to do.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily just a reactionary thing.
Totally. It wasn't. I don't think it was rebelliousness, actually. I don't think I was being rebellious. I think it was just a strong feeling of, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
And staying in this model is going to delay that.
So
and
no
therefore
regrets.
I don't think no regrets. Truly no regrets.
There's no point where you would be like, oh, maybe if I had done this a little bit more or something like that.
Honestly, no.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about what then you've gone on to like do, like things that perhaps while you were studying you wanted to do and now you've done, or things you didn't expect you would be doing, now you're doing?
Well, as I said, when I graduated, I started writing to venues and getting concerts, and that was a really great experience. It's how you cut your teeth, isn't it, really? Just doing it. You've just got to get out there and do it, and learn how to manage yourself on stage, how to prepare, and fall on your face a few times as well, and realise, okay, you know, that's never happened before, I'll make sure I prepare differently for this next time. Or you underestimate a deadline. It's the only way to learn, I think, by just doing it. I mean, obviously, milestones for me, well, you know, when I played a concerto for the first time with orchestra, that was in November 2023, and it was K488 Mozart.
I love it.
Lovely A major. And that was such a thrill, and I love to perform. And the more I'm doing it, the happier I am, and it's what gives me energy.
Last time we grabbed coffee, we talked about this a little bit, and I remember you told me a little bit about your approach, which was to play as many concerts as possible, to go around, you know, emailing churches. Let's be a little bit more practical, because we know as a freelance pianist, you know, you normally divide your career into teaching, performing, and practicing.
Yeah.
So the difficult thing with performing, if you don't already have a very established reputation through big competition wins or something, so a lot of time you have to do the hustle to reach out to people. Oftentimes it's not well paid, let's be honest. Sometimes you get paid, sometimes you don't even get paid at all. So, you know, this approach that you decide to play as many concerts as possible, was that regardless? Like, did you have a financial thinking behind this, or was it more like, nope, this is just for me to play as much as possible?
I think I recognised in the early days that I was going to have to play a lot for free.
Yeah.
To gain experience, because I remember thinking, well, actually, how do you expect to get paid engagements if you don't have any performance experience to show, to offer? And for me, the best way I would learn is by just playing in a concert. You know, play your repertoire, as I said, learn about yourself, about the pieces. And then gradually, as time went on, I started to phase out the unpaid work.
Okay.
And so...
How does that work? Can you tell us in a little bit more?
Well, I just wouldn't accept unpaid engagements, I think, because
Do
I
you
think...
reach out still?
Yes, I do still reach.
Yeah.
I'm basically my own agent.
Yeah.
And that's how I do it.
Yeah.
But I think, of course, one has to be realistic and know that there does come a point when you do have to stop offering your time for free.
Yeah.
Because we all have to make a living. And so that's basically what's happened now.
Are you able to reach out for paid work?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes, and it's led to... well, for example, I remember... well, it's happened a few times where an unpaid engagement has led to paid work. You know, and I think you have to be smart about it and think about, you know, what you're taking on. Do you have time? And yeah, that's basically what's happened so far, and it's working.
I think a lot
Touch wood.
No, I'm sure it is. I mean, firstly, you have the experience, then the mentality comes, and then you know your worth basically.
Exactly.
And I think a lot of musicians who spend a lot of time inside institutions can sometimes fail to understand their worth. Yeah. Otherwise, their worth is determined. You know, if you're lucky and you win a big competition, determined by your agents.
Or dare I say, overestimate it as well.
Yeah.
I remember talking to some people that said, "Well, I would never play for free," but they weren't playing at all. You see. So I think they were holding out for engagements.
True.
But obviously they've then got nothing to show.
Yeah.
And I'm really convinced. You know, for example, when I did St. Martin in the Fields, you know, that was an evening concert. It was a big occasion.
Yeah.
And I don't think I would have been able to do it if I hadn't built myself up with these other experiences.
Yeah.
And the same with every performance opportunity that's come since.
And that's just as valuable
Absolutely.
as an education. Really.
Yes. And, you know, I think I've seen a shift in the kind of venues that I play, you know, Poole Lighthouse earlier this year and Howdenshire Music Festival last year. You know, these things are developing, and I feel so grateful, you know, that the hard work is hopefully paying off.
Yeah. Now, do you try to build a program in advance of a season to prepare yourself and then try to... Because I looked on your website, you seem to, you know, have the same program, or roughly the same program. You play it in many concerts.
This isn't how I used to do it.
Yeah.
I used to learn a new program every year.
Yeah.
And obviously, you know, as you get busier and, you know, as you know, you're teaching as well, the business and busyness that comes with being a professional musician it can be very overwhelming.
And at some point, you just want to enjoy life and not just spend it all like just practicing, right? Yeah.
Exactly right. And I think... So I thought I'm going to have to get more savvy with how I plan my programming.
Yeah.
And so now I like to kind of slot new pieces into programs rather than say, here's a new hour of repertoire. And also that's quite a strain to go on stage with a completely new set of pieces that you've never played in public before.
Yeah.
That's quite something. You might have one new work or two or three surrounded by some familiar friends. That takes the pressure off a little bit, and you can actually enjoy the performance. There's a thought, right? Isn't it? Who'd have thought it?
I think that's also, to be honest, when we see big performers on stage at Carnegie Hall or Wigmore Hall, whatever, it's probably like their 50th time playing that program or something. And we think it's so flawless, but actually it all boils down to familiarity, really. Ultimately, you want to put your best self out there, don't you?
Totally.
I think it does justice to yourself and to the audience as well.
I also think, though, in my experience, that certain pieces always feel a bit uncomfortable. But I think just because something doesn't feel good doesn't mean that it sounds bad. You can feel uncomfortable, but it can still sound good. Similarly, I've had the opposite, where I think, that felt like a breeze, you know, and you listen back and you think, that was awful. You know, that can happen too.
Yeah.
I don't think we're ever the best judge of ourselves in the moment. You know, when you're in the driving seat and you're doing it,
Yeah.
I think
there are times when people come up to me and they're like, I really enjoyed, something. I'm not gonna say what.
Yeah.
Something. And I was like, really? I wouldn't say that to their face, but
Yes.
It's always, you never expect people to like the thing that you were least enjoying, exactly as you said.
And I think when you come off stage, a kind of second performance begins. I think if you're not happy with how you've played, and people are coming up to you and giving you praise, you have to receive that. Because I've seen it happen a few times where an audience member might go up to somebody and they'll be so ecstatic, after the performance, and the artist will say, "Oh, I've played really terribly today," and you can see that the audience member goes, "Oh." Because you've invalidated their compliment then. And people want to feel that that you're receiving their compliment. So that's what I mean by a second performance. Even if you feel you've played like a pig, you have to say thank you very much, and then go and lick your wounds and practice.
Yeah. Or have a beer.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Where's the most furthest place, or most isolated place you've played?
Most isolated place? Well, I remember trying to get over to the Isle of Man for a concert, and it was scheduled for the October in whatever year it was, I think maybe 23. And it was cancelled because they had severe storms and planes and ferries were cancelled. And then they rescheduled it for the following October, and the same thing nearly happened again. I was literally on the phone to the concert promoter on the train to the airport saying, I think they might cancel it. I've just had a message from EasyJet. And it was cancelled. And so they rescheduled it to the next day, and
that was next October.
No. So I'm going back this October. And it was rescheduled the flight, and that was very touch and go.
Yeah, that's a pretty isolated place, right?
Well, when they get bad weather, they get bad weather.
Oh, okay.
And crossing that Irish Sea in a ferry, you don't want to do that. So it's pretty bad.
Wow. Well, right before the break, we were talking about your programs a little bit. I wanted to talk to you about the pieces themselves, because you have a very unconventional choice, I would say. Can you tell me a little bit more about how you program your music and what normally you choose?
I think I'm drawn... Well, I'm just curious, I think. I'm a curious person, and I'm curious to find pieces that aren't being played. Sometimes you listen to them and think, I get why that's not being played. But then sometimes you find gems and think, I just connect with the pieces. I play things that I really believe in, and in terms of how I build a program, I do like to have a theme and work to that theme.
Do you have a theme with your current one?
Well, the recent one I did was kind of Nordic miniatures.
Okay.
And so I did some piano pieces by Sibelius.
Right.
Which everybody knows Sibelius, but nobody knows that he wrote piano music, and a lot of it. And
I think there's one etude that went viral.
Because of Yuja Wang, I think.
She
would play it as an encore, that lovely A minor etude. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that went pretty viral. But he wrote lots of other great pieces. And so I would play those, and then a group of Green's lyric pieces. A piece by Palmgren called Night in May, which is very beautiful. And then a piece by Billy Mayle, who is an English jazz composer, jazz syncopation pianist, and it's called Song of the Fir Tree. And it's actually a transcription of a Scandinavian folk melody.
That's very creative.
It kind of all fits together. And also I love to talk to the audience. That's a big part of my stagecraft, I would say. And so...
Has that been from the beginning?
I think so, yes. I've always loved that.
Yeah, because I recently attended a performance the Classical Pride. Have you heard of Classical
I
Pride?
have,
Yeah,
yes.
it was a Charlie Lovell-Jones with Charles Owen, and it was very impressive because he was very eloquent in the way he spoke, and and it just I think it does add to the performance a lot.
I think so too. I think I do it, one, because I really enjoy it. I actually just love talking to the audience. And also, I think the audience then listens with context because, they might not know anything about Sibelius or who he was. And so, I like to give them a bit of background, and say things like, Sibelius lived long enough to have heard both Bozzoni and Elvis Presley, and then that always gets a laugh, but they also can position...
Is that right, though?
Yeah,
really?
But then they can then position him historically in their minds and how it all fits together, and talking about Billy Mayle, fascinating story of his career and development as a musician, and I love sharing this because otherwise people go away having heard his piece and go, nice piece, and they probably don't think much about it. But when you learn more about the person, you're curious.
I remember something that an artist told me in one of my interviews for this podcast was that once you start going out into the real world, after conservatoire, you realize, it's not taken for granted that people know what a Beethoven sonata is.
So true.
That's something that reminds me a lot about whenever I try to present something. You have to engage.
Yeah. It's that thing that I mentioned earlier about knowledge bias, isn't it? We forget what it's like not to know something.
Absolutely.
I do this all the time. I'll go on yapping away about a concerto or something, and then I can see the person glazing over and say, what's a concerto? And then you have to explain, and I think we have to remember this when we're speaking to an audience, definitely.
And how do they respond to it, to your style of programming and to your style of presentation?
Well, so far, I think very positively. I think people often come up to me at the end of a concert, and I love talking to people afterwards, and they'll say, thank you so much for talking to us and telling us about this repertoire, and I didn't know that, and I listened differently. Or you might say to them, I don't know, point something out to listen out for, and they're all then collectively kind of leaning forward at that moment, and I don't know, it becomes a big party, and I think I enjoy that.
But of course, it also comes very naturally to you as well, this kind of speaking in public, would you say?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm slightly embarrassed to admit to that, but I don't
why?
know. I don't know why, but I think it does.
Yeah.
Probably because I did the theatre stuff and acting from such a young age.
I think that's a good skill to have, to be honest, as a performer as well. So many classical musicians are very good at playing, but not really at the presentation side of things as well.
Yeah, I think it's that really maybe developed that for me from a young age, doing those things, and I'm grateful for that. And I think it made me very aware of stagecraft, I suppose. When we would do a show, we'd always be told, if there's a big group of you on stage and you suddenly start scratching your eyebrow, people will notice that in the audience, so don't scratch, don't move. Do you know what I mean? And I think it made me very aware of these superfluous movements and
that's a great
what you
skill
wear,
to have.
and all this kind of stuff. I think it does influence, as much as we, I think, sometimes like to pretend it doesn't. It does influence people's listening.
Yeah, certainly being aware of how you're being presented is important as well. Do you think that, given what you're doing is, programming is a little bit different with miniatures? I mean, are you carrying on with that kind of theme, or, do you feel like that's something that perhaps classical music can go more into, the conventional programming of recitals? Do you think that might change in the future? Sorry, I'm throwing a lot of stuff at you.
No, I think on miniatures,
Yeah.
I love programming miniatures.
Yeah.
For a couple of reasons. It allows me space within a program to talk. I think I enjoy that. Whereas if it's a larger scale work, there's one, I think there's less time to talk, and two, they don't benefit from any talking, I think. I think, for example, something like the Liszt Sonata, I think that has to start with silence. Just boom. I think there's something so thrilling about that, and I think actually if someone spoke about it before, I think it would take away some of the magic. But anyway, that's off on a tangent. But I think for me, the miniatures, they allow room to talk. I think they're often just frankly fascinating little pieces of music. And I also, when I'm building a program with them, I feel like I'm almost building with Lego. Each miniature's like a little block of Lego, and I can create my own structures and architecture, and I can change it, and I find that really exhilarating to do that. I've got so many programs in my phone, in my notes app, where I'll think, oh, that could go with that. And
that's cool.
All the time.
Yeah.
Or I'll hear something and think, one day, jot it down, or I love doing that and feeling like I'm building the program in that way, almost becoming my own composer in a way, by putting these blocks together.
Yeah. I think because a lot of big pianists or well-known pianists who come from big wins in competitions, often they already have, as you said, the standard repertoire in them. It's mostly, they will have to stick to that kind of standard programming as well. And what you have is something perhaps more versatile. You don't necessarily, I can't just go to a salon and play the Hammerklavier Sonata. It's rare, right? But, your program can be presented in many different settings as well.
I hadn't thought of that, actually. I genuinely hadn't thought of it that way, but I suppose it does transition well. Yeah.
Do you think perhaps there's something, you're someone who engages with your audience a lot, so you probably understand how they feel and see things as well. Do you feel like there might be a disconnect between audience and performers or presenters in the classical music industry nowadays?
Yes, I think so. And this becomes very apparent to me when I go to classical concerts with friends that might not perhaps ordinarily go to a classical concert.
Yes, exactly.
And they'll leave and say to me, is it normal that they never talk? Or are we allowed to do this? Are we allowed to... It's a whole foreign language to them. It's a foreign experience. And I think it makes people a bit uncomfortable that aren't used to that environment, because they can feel the kind of weight of the tradition, which is important. I think it's an important tradition, but I think it does break barriers when artists talk to an audience. And I think this has always happened in popular music, where the music is never separate from the artist. They're one. People love the music, but they're also interested in the person that's making it. What are they wearing? What do they eat for breakfast? All this kind of stuff. And I think we separate that a lot in classical, but it's starting to change. I think with social media, I think more and more people are showing more of themselves, and not just making it only about the music.
Because we are taught a lot of times, especially in the late 20th century, there's a whole movement in classical music where it's like, composer, we must respect the composer, right? And in the 19th century, it was more like the artist above all else. So it's like constantly changing, right?
It's changing.
It's fascinating.
It is very interesting, but I think audiences feel it. And I think to people that aren't used to going to a classical concert, they find it strange because it's not what they're used to. On
the topic of social media, you do a lot with social media, don't you? Or more so now?
More so, I try to. I mean, I see some of my colleagues that really go for it, and I think hats off to that. It's a lot of work, actually. You really have to make efforts to devise content, carve out time to record it, and it's time consuming. But yes, I've started to do more.
What made you want to do that?
I think I've always been aware of the importance of it, the necessity of it. You know, if we think of any one musician that we admire, they all have an Instagram account. I think, again, it's another way of connecting to your audience.
Yeah.
And I think this became... I really noticed it when I went to a recital of one of my friends who has a big following, and a lot of the audience members had come from Instagram.
Oh,
and
right,
I thought, wow, you know, it really does bring people, you know, and makes you feel closer to them. And so I've started to do more and more mixtures of playing, and also, I like to think I've got a good sense of humour, and so I like to do funny, silly things. I don't take myself too seriously.
You do it intentionally, or...?
I don't think I do, really. I think I just think, oh, that might... people might want to see that or want to hear this, and just put it out there, really, and just see what happens.
Do you connect it with your music?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah, not always. You know, sometimes it might be... We were talking earlier when I arrived, weren't we, about that video, What's in Your Bag? You know, I mean, that was just so silly and off the cuff, not planned at all.
Yeah.
And it's like over 2,000 likes, 75,000 views, and it's like, what? You know?
So you don't see it as something you can use to promote music, or...?
I think so. I think it can promote music, absolutely. And I think what I find is people maybe come for that kind of content and then stay for the music, but also I've had, you know, some videos of playing that have done very well too. It's a real combination, but I don't think about it that much, which is probably quite disappointing to anybody.
I think
listening.
You would be good, but I think you would be the perfect personality. What you have already to bring to social media is perfect, like even just bits of your talking. Or you could even introduce your music on Instagram or something.
Well, maybe I'll have to start doing more of that. But I can honestly say, Jeremy, I don't put that much thought into it, which might be a disappointment to people. But I just do what I like, what I think people might like to see, and I don't spend too much time devising it. Which actually, I've spoken to other people that say stuff that they've put really a lot of effort into editing flops, and then they'll just do something silly and off the cuff, and it goes boom. You know, I think people can almost sense it.
Yeah.
You know, when you're trying too hard.
I think, it's the unedited versions of ourselves that are sometimes the most attractive or appealing.
Yeah, I think
and
so.
And I think as classical musicians, that is something we have to unlearn, really, because we're always like, we need to present the best version of ourselves. And that's why, you know, social media doesn't work for a lot of classical musicians.
No, and I think... I don't know, I try to hold that in balance. You know, I mean, of course, I want to absolutely play the best that I always can and keep getting better and better and better, while at the same time, I think, maintaining a level of ambivalence almost, and remembering it's music and it's the piano, and we should all be enjoying this and getting pleasure from it.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to circle back to talk about, you know, your thoughts about Conservatoire. You know, of course, it brought you good. You met Philip, you rebuilt your technique, but you also felt that you didn't need that structure to continue, you know, these endless exams, things like that. And I'm sure that someone out there listening would maybe feel the same way, or they would feel a slight confusion about, like, you know, what does Conservatoire bring me? And is it okay to step out there by yourself? You know, we're never ready at any point, to be very honest. What would you say to them?
First of all, I so agree with what you just said, that we're never ready. And, you know, I still very often, you know, walk onto stage, always feeling I could have done more. Always. I think that's important because it keeps you striving, right?
Yeah.
But I would say to anybody feeling like that it's fine. You know, it's absolutely fine to step out of that structure if you feel it's not working for you. And by the way, you can always go back into it. Do you know what I mean? If you step out and find, actually, this isn't right, maybe I would like to go back into education, go back in.
And you'd have more reason to do it now.
More reason to do it. And I think it's okay to understand that there's not just one path, one way of doing this. I think everybody is totally different. I mean, you read the biographies of, most musicians, and they've all followed a different path, really. There might be things in common, like competitions or, I don't know, scholarship schemes, whatever, but ultimately everybody is different.
Yeah.
And I think it's fine to dig your own furrow and change if you find it's not working. Be adaptable.
I think once you're outside the system, you realize that this so-called system is just something people make to create a sense that there is some sort of structure to things, when in fact it's not really.
Well, I think we're all winging it to an extent. We're all trying to make sense of it. And I think in a world that is constantly changing, you have to be adaptable. And that would be my advice. If I've got a friend that says, when she tries to make a decision, she tries to feel that the head, heart and gut are all in alignment. And I think that's a nice way. And I've very much felt that. When I came to the end of my undergraduate, I didn't really feel, maybe I should. It felt very, this is what needs to happen.
Wow. And final question. What would you say to someone who's, maybe around the age of 11 or 12? They started loving music now. Maybe they've gone to like secondary school or something, and suddenly they're like discovered music, classical music or piano. And they're like, I want to start. Is it too late?
No, it's never too late. Go for it. I think go for it. And I mean, I don't know if we're just talking about people that might decide at that age they want to do it professionally. I don't know, but I think you don't have to do it professionally. You can do something just because you enjoy it, and that's fine. Just because you're good at something doesn't mean you have to do it as your career. But it's never too late, ever. To get pleasure out of music and start loving it. I don't think it's ever too late. Yeah.
Thank you so much for a great conversation.
It's been my pleasure.
The great news is that Lewis's Nordic Miniatures program, which was mentioned in the podcast episode, is now available as a CD. So you can listen to it wherever you are, because it will be shipped to you if you purchase it via the link, which I will include in the show's description. If you want to know more about Lewis and his work, then I'll leave a link to his website as well. As usual, it's really great to have you here. If you've enjoyed this episode, then please follow the show on Spotify, as it will help the show grow. Or if you're listening on YouTube, drop us a like. It will be much appreciated. Thank you so much, and see you in the next one of On Music and Making.